mental workers, you're listening to the Mental Work Podcast, the podcast about working in mental health for early career mental health workers. I'm your host, Bronwyn Milkins, and today we are talking about what it's like to be a neurodivergent therapist. Many early career mental health workers wonder, do I belong in this profession? If you're neurodivergent, this question can feel even more pressing. From managing self-doubt to deciding whether to disclose your neurodivergence, the experience of being neurodivergent brings unique challenges but also strengths. In this episode, we'll explore how neurodivergence shapes our clinical work, communication, and our client relationships, and really just our lives. Here to help us out is our wonderful returning guest, Jordan Turner. Hey, Jordan.
Hello.
It's always such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Jordan.
Thank you. I love being here. I love having to chat all things mental work.
Yay. And can you please remind listeners who you are? And I'll ask you what you've been into these days in terms of hobbies.
Okay, I am Jordan Turner. I am an educational and developmental psychologist.
Woohoo!
Working in private practice, a solo private practice, and I primarily work with neurodivergent folk. And the thing that I'm really into these days is I'm writing a lot. I like to read, but I'm writing a lot right now.
Have I asked you what you write about?
I have mentioned before that I wrote some poetry a while back, but
I remember this. And did you publish it as well?
I did. It was all about being a mom and stuff, and like a lot of poems about my boobs, because as you do, when you're a mom, it's like the highlight of conversation.
Well, there's a lot going on, like with that. Like I'm not a mum myself, but I know that like boobs can hurt, boobs can leak, boobs like. Yeah, there's lots of big conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. People comment on them or like, I'm getting to the stage. My daughter's 3 now, and she actually was like, she notices I have boobs now beyond like them being like functional. And she's like, oh, what are those? And I was like, how do I explain this like in an age appropriate way?
Let's move to the current topic. So you work with a lot of neurodivergent clients. How did you come to be interested in neurodivergence?
I think I'll just do like the spoiler alert. Along the way, I found out I was also neurodivergent. So I'm autistic and ADHD. My sibling was diagnosed very young, like age 2, autistic and ADHD. And so I kind of had like a bit of a knowledge of that. Growing up, wanted to work with like kids and teens when I became a psychologist, and then found I liked working with kids and teens that reminded me of my sibling. And then as I worked more in that space, I was like, wait a second, I really identify with a lot of the problems that my clients are coming up with. And I was like, wait a second, oh my gosh, am I autistic as well? And spoiler alert, I am. And so I guess it just kind of naturally evolves that way. I didn't set out to work in autism because I was like, my sibling has autism, and I was like, I've had enough being surrounded by it, but I can't escape because obviously like my life is autistic. Yeah,
totally. So did you know when you started your master's that you were autistic, or did that come later down the track?
No, right. So I didn't know I was autistic until I was 30, and I'm 34 now.
Yeah.
So I started my master's, and I was doing it in dev. So I got placed in like private practices focusing on autism. I was like, oh man, I can't get away. And then I happened to be working with late diagnosis autistic people and assessing them. And I just loved their story so much. And the women, especially who were late diagnosed, sounded very, like some of their stuff sounded very similar. And I was like, yeah, of course, that's what everyone thinks, right? And then another thing that happened in my master's program was I happened to be doing like a PD on female presentations on autism. And the presenter was great, but I found myself getting really mad. Like I was like, what? This is just how it is. Like, I'm just shy. I just like to read a lot. And like somebody in the crowd somewhere was like, why is it always cats? And then I got especially mad because I love cats. And I was obsessed with
So you're like, why is this lecture a personal attack on me?
It really felt like a personal attack at the time. I was like, this is bullshit. And I was like, totally, annoyed by the whole thing. But then I kept working in the space of autistic girls and women. And I was like, wait a second. And people started asking me, and I was like, maybe, I don't know. Like the hallmarks are there. Like I was very shy, quote marks. I was socially, like, I had a hard time maintaining friendships as a teen. Loved to read, would read books constantly. Like everyone, I think our generation, or like our particular age cohort, would read a lot of Harry Potter, right? So I would read the books over and over again, like through rotation. And I read books like so quickly. Like I would finish them in like a day, and then
me too. I remember when I used to go travel as a teen, I would pretty much fill like half my suitcase or maybe 3/4 of books because I would read them so fast. And I was like, which books am I going to bring? Like it was just like a huge like dilemma of my time.
Yeah, and it's an expensive hobby, isn't it? Like, cause you finish a book and you can't of course libraries exist, but yeah, libraries are your best friend as an autistic girl, right?
Yes, I literally libraries were so my best friend. I think our library card number was 20 numbers and I had it memorized just so I could give them my library number and get my card and everything, because if you ordered books online, you could request books online, then you had to enter in your library card. And I was like, it's so annoying getting out my card. I'll just memorize the 20 digits. So that's how library I was.
Oh, that's good. Like library fan club all the way.
I love the library.
Yeah, so I guess I didn't know in my master's. I finished up my master's, found I really was, I actually, like, when we had to decide what our thesis was, I was like, I really want to investigate these gender differences more. And so my thesis was on gender differences in autism. And I found that, women were underdiagnosed, and it felt like I was like unraveling this conspiracy against women who were autistic at the time. And this was kind of like on the precipice of everyone kind of recognizing that women look different.
Yes.
And oh my God, there's a whole area that women have not been diagnosed. And so I guess, I feel like we're going on a tangent here, but basically I didn't realize until when I turned 30, I got pregnant with my daughter, and I was like, I need to know once and for all, because of course autistic need to know exactly like what the hate ambiguity,
Yes.
And I ended up getting the assessment, and they were like, yeah, you are you're high masker and all that. And I was like, oh my God. And then you have like the moment where you get diagnosed and you're like, I tricked them somehow. Like I'm not really autistic. And that's so common in like late diagnosis women as well. Like they're just like, but maybe I did too much research and I just told them what they wanted to hear.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so that's a big thing I see in my clients.
Oh, that's really interesting, because I was like, well, how would you do that? Like, unless you're a really good actor or something. But I guess if you're just so used to presenting as air quotes neurotypical or normal, then maybe you could think that.
Yeah, it was just like, because they're like, oh, what if I really am just shy? Or what if I'm really I'm just a little bit like weird or something.
Do you still feel like you tricked them, or have you come to have a different perspective on your own diagnosis?
I feel like it took me a while. Like I was like, for a while there, I was like, oh, I'll just sit with this and kind of see how it feels. And then like, the other thing that kind of happens once you get diagnosed is you start to demask a little bit. And you get more kind of aware of like the things you are doing in your life to fit into a neurotypical like expectation.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's a reason why I hate music playing at any given time. Like it has to be silent in my house. So, there's a reason why I have like a meltdown if I don't have like a day to myself. And it becomes more obvious the more you reflect on it. And then you're like, oh, God, like maybe it's true. And then, I guess you also have to trust the judgment of the person who's done like several different measures to kind of diagnose you and kind of see what's going on.
Yeah, so they've corroborated it across several measures, as well as taken a diagnostic interview and gotten your history.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so trust their judgment a little bit too. But like, and it feels like that's a thing, imposter syndrome after getting diagnosed, especially in women, because women aren't believed in the medical system at all.
No. Yeah, medical gaslighting is a real term. It's a real thing.
Oh, it's crazy. And I'm like, the more I'm in it, the more disillusioned I am with like the system, which is probably why I'm in private practice, but that comes up with its own host of difficulties as well.
The next tattoo I'm going to get is of Lisa Simpson saying the whole damn system is wrong. And I'm very excited about that. So yes, I resonate strongly with that.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great tattoo. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't like, I'm going to go in and for my autistic peeps and become a psychologist for them. Because I think at the time that I was doing my training, it wasn't kind of okay to be autistic. The stigma was stronger. I think it's like in the last couple of years for sure, like the stigma is way down. Like they really resonate with that like lived experience.
I think you're right, because I guess we were doing our psych careers and starting out at roughly the same time. And yeah, and in my 5+1, which was in 2017, I have ADHD, and no way did I ever dare tell anybody. And it was really hard for me because of a few things associated with my ADHD. But I was like, I'm never going to ask for accommodations. I'm never going to bring this up. I think now I would treat it differently.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I remember that so much gains have been made in the last 5 years. It must be because when we first started, because now it's the talking point. Like people seek you out if you're a neurodivergent psychologist, if you are working with neurodivergent populations. But and neuroaffirming practice is now kind of, I think it's being integrated into
it's a new competency. So I think from December this year for psychologists, we have to be neurodivergent affirming. Like that's part of our competence now. So everybody should be getting PD this year to make sure that they meet that competence when it comes in December.
Hit me up if you need it.
Yeah, totally. Hit Jordan up. Are you gifted as well?
I'm twice exceptional. I have high ability. I did score in the gifted range for fluid reasoning and verbal comp.
Oh, very cool. But it's one of those things that's not talked about. So So I have ADHD. I don't quite meet the criteria for autism, but I find it really easy to communicate with autistic people. And I meet some criteria, but not all of them. And then I'm also in the range of mild giftedness. So I think 2 standard deviations above. So my processing speed is really fast and my verbal comprehension is also very fast. And that causes chaos with my ADHD, which is impulsivity. And it's I get everything very quickly and I can do it fast. And then it's sometimes those are the wrong decisions.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. And the flip side, my processing speed is in the average range, but there's a variable profile. I think we'll probably talk about this later on another episode, but variable profiles wreak havoc on your self-concept and deeply frustrating for people. Yeah, yours is an interesting profile.
I know, I really can't. It's so hard because I can't find anything about it. So I'll try Googling high processing, because they always do the opposite for giftedness. They do you're really good at working memory, but your processing speed is low. And I'm like, no, I'm the opposite.
Yeah, so interesting. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So we're both neurodivergent. We want to talk about what it's like being a neurodivergent therapist. And I thought we could start off with some of the strengths first, so we don't just get into a deep, dark pit of despair. How does that sound?
Oh, really? It's easy to do, right?
Yeah. I was compliment sandwich ourselves.
All right. We can do that. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the strengths that you see that neurodivergent practitioners bring to their work that might not always be recognised or valued?
I don't want to just speak blanket because everyone's got different strengths and weaknesses, I suppose. But in my experience, the pattern recognition is a real strength. Recognizing problem behavior or tricky behaviors that need to be addressed and that keep coming up for the client. So I find that is probably a really big strength.
Yeah, and I noticed that quite early for me as a therapist. And I think clients really appreciate it. So they'd be saying something and then I feel just like I'm a big detective, and they'd say something and then I'd be like, but 10 minutes ago you also said this. Is this linked to this? And does that relate to that? And could that be explaining what's happening now? And they're like, whoa.
Totally. Expanding the focus, drawing connections from things that seemingly unrelated. I think that's a massive strength. because like the different perspective as well, right? Like, so I guess like if we're thinking about neurotypicals as being typical, maybe the typical person might not see this, but then someone who's like neurodivergent notices this connection that isn't readily accessible to the majority, for example.
Yes.
Which is why I think like Einstein is a genius, because like he probably saw something that most people didn't, you know?
Is there anything else for you that you feel is a strength or something that you've brought to your work?
I actually like, there's so many strengths. So it's hard to talk. It's hard to talk about all of them because I assess people as well. One of the things that I think is a real strength is my ability, like attention to detail. Like I notice as like before I was diagnosed, I kind of got like this reputation for writing like really extensive observations of the client, like to the nth degree detailed. Probably not necessary, like in the grand scheme, but noticing those details, like the visual details of the client's bopping their knee, and like the kind of sensory detail that you can pick up. I think that probably works for ADHD too, and like I guess I'm both, so maybe I don't know if it's either or. But the inability to filter information, so you see so much more than maybe like a neurotypical therapist might.
I also find that that's a strength, and I find that's really helpful because I guess like maybe this is where like I find it difficult, but I can pick up on details and then sometimes I don't know what they mean. But then if I talk about it in supervision, then I can figure out what they mean. So I'll pick it up and then the supervisor will be like, oh, could that be this? And I'll be like, oh yeah, but it's good that I'm picking it up.
Totally. No, I get that as well. I do have, it reminds me of a time where I had this session and I like beautiful minded something with the client. And then I brought a supervisor and I was like, what do you make of this? Because I was like, I see a pattern here, but I don't really know what it means. Can you please help me?
Yeah, please explain. Yeah. Yeah, I find that that's a great strength as well. Okay, other strengths.
I think the taking things to the nth degree, that need for specificity for autistic people is really a strength, because it's like a dog with a bone. Like you just need to find out what the answer is.
Yes.
So you keep like, especially like if we're thinking about schema therapy, like that drill down technique, that's a really good one for that. But like for me, like I feel like the dog with a bone when I'm like thinking about differential diagnosis. I'm like, is it this or is it something else? And like sometimes I can get like spin my wheels a bit because I need to find the clarity in that, and like don't want to go into the weaknesses or difficulties, but that can be also hard.
I do find that that's a really big strength as well for neurodivergent therapists. And, again, we're generalizing here, so everybody have different strengths profiles. But I noticed that that's a strength for me as well. But something that I did notice early on is that because I'm so interested genuinely in what's happening for clients, I had to stop myself from having a session become an interrogation. So I only noticed it like a few times, and then I caught myself and I was like, crap, I'm actually interrogating this client because I want to know what's happening so bad. They're probably feeling scared. I need to pull back. So something that I do say to clients, even at the first session, is like, today I'll be asking you a lot of questions, and that's simply to understand what's happening for you and because I'm curious, but I understand that we just met, so you might not want to answer all those questions. You might want to sidestep them, and that's completely okay. Please do what you're comfortable with.
Oh man, I wish I did that. I do. Yeah. I definitely tend to, like, sometimes I will interrogate, especially if the client is not particularly chatty. And that's like a boundary thing that I need to work on, is like when the client is like not super chatty, then I don't need to be like, okay, let me ask you questions until you talk more and beat you into submission,
But it's like I've always been like that. My mum always tells this story of how when I was in pre-primary, there must have been a girl who had selective mutism. And my mum always says that I just talked at her until it sounds like she just gave in and relented to me. So like, how do I change this characteristic that's always been a fundamental part of me, of talking at people to like get them involved?
I think any kind of strength and weakness or difficulty is, it's a double-edged sword. Like, I don't think that, like, anything that you think of that could be, like, bad, like interrogating people, per se.
Yeah.
like your need for information and getting the information is important. Like, so you might have missed out on information because you were like, oh, my social nuance, let's hold back. Whereas like a client would be like, if you ask the direct question, they'd be like, oh yeah, actually, now that you mention it, blah, blah, blah.
Maybe this is a good opportunity to talk about the social model of disability, which is the way I always think of social model of disability is like having short-sightedness would be a disability if we didn't have glasses. But because we have glasses and people have access to glasses, it's not a disability, it's something that we can work with. So likewise, with the things that we're describing as having a double-edged sword, in the right environments and with the right people, they're not negatives at all. They actually help us thrive. I was even thinking that with your detailed observations, I'm like, if you were in a forensic setting, you would be A++, that would be highly valued.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess that's one of the things I emphasize to some of my clients is that find work that suits your strengths. And if you're the kind of person who's detail oriented or likes things to be done just so, then look for work that like encourages that. And there are jobs out there for autistic and ADHDers that really reward that.
Yeah, exactly. Another strength that I wanted to add was authenticity and directness. You kind of mentioned directness before, but I didn't explicitly go out seeking neurodivergent clients when I first started, but they just all sort of came to me and then they stuck with me. And I think it's because I find it very easy to communicate with fellow neurodivergent people, but also I think they appreciate the directness. So early on in my training, I had a supervisor and she was like, Bronwyn, I don't even set goals with clients. I just chat with people. And I was like, nope, I'm out of here. And that style suits some people very well. Absolutely. But for me, I really wanted to be somebody who tells people what we're doing and why. And then I had supervisors push back and be like, you're kind of pulling back the curtain too much. And I had to think about that a lot. I had to think about whether I'm doing that and I'm like ruining the magic of therapy or something. And yeah, it was something that I really grappled with. And then I was just like, no, actually, I think particularly I work with a lot of clients who experience trauma as well. And I see it as very containing and creating a safe space and structure. Like, here's what I'm doing and why. Here's what this session's going to, here's what I want to do today. But what would you like to do today? What's important to you? And so I really seek to have a collaborative relationship where we're equal. But yeah, I do feel like that directness is a neurodivergent strength. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's so true. And the more detailed, the better in my view, because like you said, with neurodivergent folks, the more transparent you are about what
transparency.
You're doing.
Exactly.
I feel like that helps. And you're right. Also with trauma, like the more being able to establish a safe space by saying this is exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, you give them autonomy. You
must do this. We're not doing that. No.
So like when I write my reports, I err on the overly detailed because I feel like if I am diagnosing someone as autistic, they would really appreciate the level of detail.
Me too. Yeah. I've done a report for somebody and I actually inserted more detail in that report because they're neurodivergent and they asked for more detail. And I said to them, that's absolutely fine. I'll give you more detail. But I said to them as well, I was like, my training actually said, give you less detail than I've already given you. And they were like, that would have enraged me. And I was like, I know that.
I think there's a guideline at the moment and it might change by the time this comes out or something. But like people don't report IQ numbers.
That's what I was talking about.
And there you go.
Yeah.
and like you go in and that an IQ test gives you an IQ number. Like this is probably a hot take.
Yeah.
And then you go in and the psych doesn't give you the number.
Yes.
For me, I would be pissed.
Me too.
Like, I guess you can provide that information, but don't just, obviously the reason why they withhold that information is specifically because they don't want people to misinterpret it, right?
Yeah.
Because IQ measurements are not, typically, you don't want to just, see the number and then, generalize. You usually need to explain what's going on there.
Yeah, but for me, I'm like, well, then give people that context. Don't take away that autonomy from me. Allow me to have it and then explain it to me and interpret it. And I'm smart enough to understand that.
Yeah, and that's how I feel as well. Is like, yeah, give them the opportunity to deter. Like, I think the other thing is that you have to make it like reader friendly, so that
Yeah.
I would never do an assessment without telling the client about the findings. Like, I just need
Yes.
to, like, I think that's just good practice anyway. You
Totally.
need to kind of explain, like, this is how I came to this. I've explained all this. And also, like, I like to give people the opportunity to ask follow-up questions or have a follow-up session to debrief it. Because if something doesn't make sense to them, then I want them to tell me and explore it.
100%. I really love that as well. I love that. I wonder if that's a neurodivergent strength as well. You know, something just off the cuff that I've found about a difference potentially, and it's such a generalization, but tell me if you've noticed this. I feel like neurotypical people will say, give me feedback. And then when I give them feedback, they get angry at me. Whereas with neurodivergent people, they're like, give me feedback. And I genuinely want the feedback and I'm happy to receive it. So like if someone says to me like, can you explain this further? I'm like, yes, absolutely. Relatable?
Totally. Like, honestly, I've gotten into so much trouble by giving people exactly what they ask for in face value. Like, I just can't be bothered with trying to dissect whether or not you actually want feedback or not. Like, are you just asking for politeness or do you want me to actually tell you what I really think? Like,
I err on the side of they don't actually want feedback. And then another line, which I am now taking as slightly threatening, is please don't hesitate to ask me any further questions after I've already asked like 10 questions. And then they still put that in. And I'm like, this is like, don't ask me further questions, I think. And then I stop asking questions. And I'm like, I've annoyed them enough.
Do you know what, though? I think that that feeds into masking, doesn't it? Like it does. Subtext of like a question. Then it puts the neurodivergent person kind of in a position where they feel, what did they really mean by that? And you spend time and mental load agonizing over what did they really mean by that.
Yes.
And that causes autistic burnout and stress and all of the other things. So like, I think since being diagnosed, and that was like 4 years ago, I found it kind of freeing just to be like, you know what? I'm just going to take what you say at face value and talk you if it's wrong.
Well, yeah. And it's like, you know, even before when you mentioned unmasking still makes me feel very afraid because I associate unmasking with getting in trouble. And so,
totally.
Yeah. And it's like, I think neurodivergent people get in trouble all the time because it's just so hard.
You do.
Yeah. And it's not like it'd just be reprimand or like a look of disgust or like a look of admonishment from somebody, or it can be actual like you've done the wrong thing. And so, yeah, unmasking is hard.
I also really hate the idea of like having done something wrong, but then nobody says anything about it. So
me too.
Like,
why wouldn't you tell me?
Yeah, please tell me so I can not do it again. Add it to my mental log of like all the norms that I need to follow.
Oh my God, absolutely. Is there any other strength that you wanted to mention?
I think that we kind of alluded to it in that whole discussion just then, was that like a neurodivergent client will appreciate the perspective of a neurodivergent clinician. So that lived experience is really highly sought after these days for people who are either exploring neurodivergence or identify as neurodivergent or are neurodivergent for that specificity. Because imagine like being, we're probably going to talk about this later, so I might like...
Okay, sure. Okay, I agree with that 100% though. I've noticed with working with neurodivergent clients, they've been to several therapists beforehand, and I don't know if they're neurodivergent or not. But anyway, I think one of the things about neurodivergent people is that they do speak directly. They feel like they're asking for things directly, yet they're not receiving the response that they're wanting. And they're like, but I've told you directly what it is that I need here. And so I feel like when you get a neurodivergent therapist, they're able to meet them. And it's like, I hear what you're saying directly. I'm going to meet that need rather than dance around it.
Yeah. And if they can't meet that need, then they'll tell you. Say so. And
exactly.
Refer on as appropriate.
Yeah, which is appreciated.
Yeah, totally. Like transparency, I think, is a huge strength of autistic ADHD therapists.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's get into some potential challenges of being a neurodivergent therapist. I've got a few here, but is there something on the top of your head that you wanted to speak to?
I think I have one that's a little bit like less obvious, and it's like the way a neurodivergent person might recognize social hierarchy,
Okay.
especially if you're a psychologist or a mental health professional working in a system, and being aware that there is a power differential between you and your clients. That boundary can be a little less clear to a neurodivergent therapist. So you can be a little bit too friendly or something like that, or like give the client the impression that you're friends when you're actually the therapist, or like on the broader scale, being a bit more like having issues with authority figures in a system. Like, for example, if you're at a school and you have like your code of ethics, but then you have to like follow like the rules of school as well, and they clash, then that might cause like it's hard to kind of recognize authority in that. And like I think in my experience, not just as a neurodivergent therapist, but as a like in other workplaces, I've had issues with not understanding how to interact with an authority figure in that like I'm either too friendly or I'm a little bit too pushy when I should be like
defer
or like differential. But again, like that can also be like flip that can be a strength for teens who don't respect like authority figures and they need that more like friendly kind of like casual touch to therapy, as long as you establish that there is a power differential here. Like I am your therapist, and again, that's being explicit. But also, I could see that being a problem in a system when I'm working, or just because I don't know and I'm like not always aware of that, and has been a problem before I was a psychologist.
Yeah, absolutely. Same, me too. I think the way that challenge showed up with me early in my career was, yes, I was very friendly. So, and because I speak plainly as well, which is something that I like about my style, I like that I can say words and that clients understand what they mean. But sometimes you're right, it can be, I don't know, it's just difficult because on the one hand, we're told that friendliness, warmth is part of the therapeutic relationship. But on the other hand, you do need to maintain those professional boundaries with clients. And it's important that they know the distinction, that they know your boundaries, and so that they know what their role is as well in this therapeutic relationship. And I've worked on that over time, absolutely, because, and I think the key way that I've worked on it is, one, in my initial session and in subsequent sessions. So in the initial session, I'll say to them that this will be a warm, inviting environment that we're building here, but that doesn't mean that we won't have difficult conversations. And so if I see you getting in your own way, then I'll be the person who will gently and empathetically tell you that's what's happening. And so we will discuss both how you are feeling and how I am feeling, and we can use that to help you achieve your goals, something like that. And so I flagged to them that this isn't going to be all rainbows and butterflies. And then the other thing I did was that I wasn't talking about myself excessively, but I actually noticed that maybe I'd just drop in a line here and there and I'd be like, oh yeah, I relate to that. So it wasn't anything super serious, but I noticed that I was dropping in too many lines that were self-referential to me. And I found if I took those out, then that made things better. And of course, if you've got your own style where you use your lived experience deliberately as part of the therapeutic process, continue. But that's just what worked for me in being a very friendly person.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance because like your lived experience can be, oh God, I keep saying it, like it's a strength and
it is absolutely.
Like it's something you can understand and sometimes deeply empathize with a client. But the flip side of that is that you might have blind spots because you are either going through the same thing as the client or had in the past, and in which case you need to be really mindful of like that countertransference thing. If it gets in the way, they need to be referred on.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, that doesn't mean that you're a failure as a therapist, but you got to recognize that, like, and it sucks because, like if you do identify really closely with the client's, like, lived experience, then they probably, like, feel that level of, like, rapport with you. But it's important to, like, refer on in that space because you don't want to lose your objectivity because we have to be objective of all things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for some people as well, if we're not objective, we can lose sight of the client as a whole person. So I'm thinking about this because specifically I had one example really early on in my career, and they were a person who had narcissistic traits that I wasn't aware of. And I think because I'd lost my objectivity, I was presenting as friendly, engaging. And then I didn't realize that there was this more, I guess, differently needed side that I needed to respond to and manage. And so I think as a neurodivergent therapist, if you're relating too strongly, then you can miss that and you just get into trouble. It just gets complex. And so it's very important to be able to recognize.
Yeah, that's like, I think that's probably, especially if your area is neurodivergence. I've been reflecting on this in therapy, in supervision, and therapy, because therapists should go to therapists too. Yeah. It's like, how much do I identify with my clients, and can I maintain objectivity in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that kind of enmeshment.
I think that might be something that probably a lot of neurodivergent therapists with the like people please, like self-sacrificing schemas and all of that really like feeds into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a key schema amongst neurodivergent therapists as well is social alienation. I say that because that's like one of my key schemas. And that one is basically, I feel different to other people. And so when you meet somebody who you feel a connection to, it can be really like, wow, like there's, because you just feel alone, like a lot of the time.
Totally.
Like I've said it in previous podcasts, but knowing how you are feeling and reflecting on that and not being afraid to bring that up in supervision and really talk with yourself about it is so important.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I think about that, and feeling othered is something that I felt a lot when I was younger, and without really knowing why, obviously. And that manifests in my like wanting to help others who felt that way, like younger folk that feel that way now.
Yeah.
And so that is something to be mindful of.
And then we can get into a rescuer role.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So I need to be like aware of whether that's playing out. And if it is, then I need to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder, do you have a neurodivergent supervisor?
Yeah, I do.
Because I was just wondering, I was like, well, I wonder if maybe because neurodivergent people, we might have different schemas and ways of seeing the world and ways of seeing ourselves. And maybe it might be harder to pick that up if we don't have like a mentor who is neurodivergent themselves, like being able to be like, oh, this might be occurring for you. I don't know.
So I have a couple of supervisors. One of them is neurodivergent, but she doesn't work with neurodivergent folk. Like they are like incidentally coming, but that's not like her area of expertise or, like her client focus, I suppose. So it's interesting hearing from her. And she, bizarrely, like, in fact, I said this to her the other day, is that I find sometimes her really challenging. Like the way that she challenges me is, and I lean into that because like she's challenging my biases that are playing out in therapy that maybe I'm not aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, like one of my earliest mentors, and she's now my friend, very direct style of communication, not neurodivergent, but just like a no bullshit person. And I really love her for that. And she's so good at being empathetic as well, but she would just kill me with a single line and be like, but Bronwyn, you haven't seen this. And I'd be like, oh, you're so right. And that hurts.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
Like, cause I don't know about you, but like my particular like style of therapy is I'm very warm and like person centered. And so like, and it's not that different to how I present like any other context. Like I'm just friendly. Like obviously I'm probably a bit more like professional in my work.
Yeah, I like the only difference is I pretty much laugh less and I say shorter sentences and I listen more. I don't talk very much actually in therapy. I try to reduce the amount that I talk.
I was thinking the other day I'm prone to speeching.
If I do monologue, I will like be like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to monologue at you for a second, and then I'll jump back. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's like if I'm giving psycho ed, I'm like, can I just monologue for a second and tell you the thing?
Yeah.
Or like if I'm hyping a client up and doing like limited reparenting.
Yeah.
Like, there's like a monologue involved in that usually. But yeah, gosh, I worry about that because like I'm extra mindful of like I'm friendly and I'm open and I'm pretty transparent as a person.
Yeah.
But I want to be mindful that I'm not accidentally being inappropriate with my boundaries because I find those boundaries hard as a neurodivergent person.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. And I will say that I've had to put heaps of extra work into that because I value transparency. And that's what's gotten me in trouble is like sometimes I've been too transparent at the expense of thinking of how that would affect the client. And so like that was a big learning curve for me that it's like, even though I value transparency up here, like very highly, you also have to balance that with thinking about how the words you say can be interpreted and understood by the client and how that would affect them, and be ready if you want to say that to them to deal with that. If it's not appropriate and you can't work that out, then you don't say it. And that can not sit right with a neurodivergent person. And then I was like, so you want me to lie to the client? It's like, no, no, no. You just want to be appropriate with what you're saying. And I was like, okay, I can deal with that.
It makes sense. Like it's sometimes it doesn't connect in that moment, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Like, this is what I would want. I just want them to tell me blah, blah, blah. And then like you kind of, and I guess that's the impulsive bit as well. It's like you might just say exactly what you're thinking when maybe there needs to be a little bit of nuance to protect feelings.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I guess maybe that's something that I wanted to touch on with a challenge is that thinking about that, having to think about it in that way and do this mental load, I guess. I don't know if neurotypical people have to deal with the same mental load that we do as neurodivergent people, but that can be very draining. And I've written down here as well, like listening deeply all the time, like regulating your own emotions, maintaining attention, shifting attention. This can be more draining for some neurodivergent folk and increase our vulnerability for burnout. Is that something that you've noticed?
Oh, 100%. I have a very limited social battery as it is.
Yeah.
And so our job is socializing and being like the ideal socializing kind of person too. Like you're being the ideal person to talk to in a situation where you need support. And so there's only so many people you can be that person for in a day or in a week.
Yeah.
And like if you stretch yourself too thin in particular, it starts bleeding into your like how you interact with people outside of work. You start feeling more like depleted and less bandwidth for like the personal support of like people around you, such as like family members and friends and stuff like that. So in that way, yeah, like I can see that so much. And I honestly, like, I think that the job, like, I don't think I work a full caseload. Like
No, neither.
I really couldn't. Like, I don't think I could work more than, like, I was thinking about this when I was starting my private practice. Like, I did 12 billable hours per week when I was in group private practice and when I was a contractor. And that felt manageable for me. That would have been, like, maybe 2.5 days, right?
Yeah.
Now, because I'm also doing, like, the admin stuff and the emails and all that and the switching, the task switching, that's the thing that's getting me right now. That I actually don't know if I can see 12 or do 12 billables in a week anymore. I have to do fewer than that, which is bad because, like, obviously I need to make a living, but I also need to weigh my, like, you can't make a living if you burn out either. So it's a really tricky balance. Like, what do you do in that space? Like, and I think that's why there's, like, so many, like, advertisements for, like, passive income and here's some workshops that you can develop and stuff like that, because people are recognizing that, like, you have to conserve your energy.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I wish we had data on it. I wish we had national data for psychologists, for mental health professionals, who are therapists, of how many clients you see a week. Because I reckon it's the minority that would be able to see, air quotes, full caseload, like 5 days a week, or even 6 clients a day. Yeah, that would be my suspicion.
And I also want to know, like, what is the quality of their therapy and what kind of people are they working with? And are they doing, like, manualized therapy or are they doing, like, curated therapy? Because there's mental load in that as well.
Exactly. And yeah, because I resonate with you. I feel tired out from therapy. It's really draining. And I think as a neurodivergent person, we try so hard to give the best service to our clients. I think we have high standards for ourselves. I don't like it if I'm not doing my best for somebody.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I hate it. Like, yeah, I'm a perfectionist. I've always been.
Yeah.
And I just, like, it because I think that feeds into that autistic all or nothing kind of
Yeah.
thoughts as well. Like it has to be perfect or it's terrible. And
Yeah. It's so
like,
true.
it's not. It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah, I started giving like an overall rating to my sessions, and I'd be like, good, average, room for improvement. But like if it's anything other than good, I'm like, meh, it was an average session. Blah, I feel awful.
And the thing about that is, and I heard this, like, I don't know where I heard this, but that might be how you perceive
Exactly.
it with the client. Like, I might have thought that was like revolutionary.
Yeah, they're like, she says like amazing.
And you're like, oh my God, I was so like, that session, you know? But so it's interesting because like what we experience as the therapist is not the same as what the client experiences. And
it's so true. There was like, I remember during my training, there was an example of a therapist. It might have been Yolom, like everything's Yolom. So I'll just say it's Yolom. But I think he did this experiment where he wrote his perspectives on sessions, then he got his patients to write their perspectives on the sessions, and they compared, were they similar, were they different, completely different. And so he would be exactly as we were saying, like, this was a rubbish session. I felt like there was some resistance between us and a power struggle, and the client's like, everything was great, I had a good time. We made some good progress.
And he obviously knows what he's talking about, right? Like he's done this for years. But what the heck? Just on that note, how did he do it for so long? Like, how does anyone do this for so long? Like, I don't know.
Well, it's a question I've asked myself, and I've been like, how do I survive in this career, full stop, but also as a neurodivergent person? I'm not sure I can keep on doing therapy full time, which is why whenever I get a very experienced psychologist on the podcast now, I've taken to asking them, I'm like, how are you doing this? And it's like, it's for the listeners, but it's also for me.
Totally. Like, of course he was. Yeah, like I so understand that. And then it's interesting because thinking about where we are in our career, because we are like, we're kind of pushing, we're still early career, but we're pushing mid-career now.
I'm pushing mid-career now. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like 5 is like when you're starting to push mid-career, and that's when you start having like this crisis of like, am I doing the right thing, or do I like, and I guess I wonder if that's more salient for a neurodivergent folk because they're more prone to burnout, like autistic and neurodivergent kind of burnout in general. But also like, this is a really taxing profession.
It is really taxing.
This is off the cuff of your, like, it obviously this will be released later, but like off your burnout episodes with Matt.
Yeah.
Like, so true for a lot of people in psychology.
I think we're tired. Yeah, we are tired.
And I don't know, like, has it always been this way, or is it worse now because like it's post-COVID and everyone's traumatized? Like,
well, it's interesting because okay, so I'll tell you this story. A few years ago in the neurodivergent Facebook group, I made a post because I was about to do 2 days of face-to-face training, and I was really scared because I get super burnt out when I do 2 days of face-to-face training. And so I wanted tips on how to manage this. And so I said to them, like, the lights hurt me, being in constant social interaction hurts me. I feel like my mental health like noticeably deteriorates when I do this full day of training because I can't get any breaks. I can't do the things that I usually do to keep me well. Any tips? And then the feedback I got was like, I think we all experience this, like neurotypical and neurodivergent, but we don't say it. And then a really interesting comment was like that they said that neurodivergent folks kind of break the ice almost in a way about these things that everybody's thinking and feeling, but they just don't say it. And so I feel like we're the leaders and we're like, hey, this is shit. And then everybody's like, oh, it is too. So in answer to your burnout question, I think everybody's experiencing it, but we might just not be talking about it.
Yeah, totally. I'm thinking of like Greta Thunberg, who's like, it's just like, fuck everyone for ruining the environment. Like she was.
Yeah, exactly.
She's autistic as well. So like,
yeah, she's so great. I love Greta.
I know, it's just like everyone hates her because she's not like personable. But I was like, no, she's autistic. She's like being authentically like enraged as she should be. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, authentically enraged. Yeah, it's I think I've said this on the podcast before, but my brother has an intellectual disability and cerebral palsy, and he also has a vision disability. And I get super passionate about how people treat him and people with disability in general. And so I actually don't work with people with disability because I feel unable to stay in my psych role. And I'm like, nah, I can't hold back.
You are so like, I wish I had that insight. Like, I feel like I'm, because my sibling was like, before I was like diagnosed autistic, I was like, I have a sibling who's autistic, like I said, has autism. And I was like, so I have a unique insight, but I'm not like, and I was like, being a like autistic adjacent was like my marketing strategy. And then it's like, now it's like, if you are autistic, it's a thing. But yeah, and you're, like, I kind of think that like maybe I need to reflect on that and like be like, yeah, if it's too close to home, is it okay for me to work in this space? Like, how do I like pull it back a little bit?
Yeah, and obviously, this is not a criticism of anybody who does work in the disability space and has also got loved ones with disability. It's a personal thing. It's just for me, I was like, I cannot tone it down. I get too angry straight away. And because of my ADHD impulsiveness, I can't hold it back. And I was like, medication can't do that for me either.
No, that's so true though. Like, you're right.
Yeah.
Like I get angry on behalf of my clients. And I think that maybe that's like, it galvanizes me, but I also don't know how like that could be a problem. Like if it means that it impacts my objectivity, then that's a problem.
Yeah, because I can send really good letters as well. Like that's a strength of mine as well. So like if I had a client with a disability, say, for example, and then I couldn't hold myself back, I'm like, as a very privileged person who has a high level of education, I'm very happy to use that to assist people who are in vulnerable positions. And if I know that I can be of help, I will send a scathing letter, I will send an influential letter, and I will help you get what you need. But yeah, I could be moving outside my role. I could say shit that makes shit worse. And so, yeah, it's better for me to not be part of it.
Oh, that's food for thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely had clients in the past who have reminded me of my sibling and even like myself as a younger person. It's important to keep that in mind.
There's two things that I wanted to talk about. This is just going to be a longer episode.
That's okay.
Two things I wanted to talk about. Number one was I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome, and then I wanted to talk about disclosure. Well, actually, which one did you want to do first?
Your call.
Let's do imposter syndrome because I'm keen to hear your take on this. Do you feel like you have it? Do you feel like the neurodivergence is part of that or different?
I think I do have imposter syndrome. I don't think I'm alone in that. I don't know if you can be a psychologist without imposter syndrome. Like, I feel
so
like
true. Such a wise thing. Yeah.
Because we don't show our true selves to people. Yeah. Like, as authentic as we can be and transparent as we can be in session, we are messy people behind the scenes that have issues just as much as the next person, and like lose our shit over things and talk, like we talk the talk, but then we might go home and like our house is a fucking mess or something when we're talking about executive functioning skills, or so there is an element of imposter syndrome inherent to the role of psychologist, I think. As a neurodivergent person, I don't know. I find it hard to separate. I think that there's an element to, like, I think being a psychologist in the room is masking. Like, I don't think you can not mask as a psychologist. That's part of it. And you don't even have to be neurodivergent to mask.
No. You need to take on that professional tone.
Yeah. Like, you're performing a role. And so in that way, like, I just don't know if, like, I think that's probably, it feels stronger for other people, but people who are, for autistic and ADHDers, but people who are like high maskers anyway, I don't know if they know any different. It would always feel like an imposter, like no matter what scenario.
What do you think of this idea? Like, I guess I'll frame it in terms of me, but sometimes I just feel like I don't belong because of like the different ways I think about things, or like I'm like, other people seem to get this so easily. Like there must be something about me that's not belonging. And I feel like that's part of my neurodivergence. Thoughts, resonance, differences?
I feel like, I was actually thinking about this with as far as billable hours goes. Like, I don't think I could do more than 12. Like that feels weird. And to me, like even in my personal life, like I really struggle with the identity of mother and like all that. And I know that's linked to my neurodivergence. Like that's part of, but among other things, like, let's not make this into a therapy session, but there's just yeah, I think there is this element of why is it so hard for me? And the reason
Yeah.
why it's so hard, and this is what we tell our clients, is because it's not designed for us. It's the system is not designed for us. So we need to change the system to be more more accommodating to us, or step outside the system, which is kind of the reason why I'm in private practice, because I can change the system within my little window to suit me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, there's a high level of control over your tasks and how you do things, which is good. So you don't feel like an imposter in being a therapist?
I mean, I think there's an element of like, am I a good therapist? Like, I don't really know. Because
Yeah.
I think I am. Like, there's evidence to suggest that I am, but like, who knows really? Because it takes like
Yeah,
one person to shatter your confidence, you know?
it really does.
Yeah, if you're like a perfectionist and like somebody is unhappy. And like, just to like clarify, this is something that my supervisor said the other day, was that just because a client is unhappy doesn't mean that you're not doing your job. Like,
Wow.
you might be
Good stuff.
like, they might be pissed off, but that's part of
Yeah.
the growth that they need to experience in therapy.
It's so true. And it's something to remember because, yeah, therapy isn't always going to be comfortable for people, and they're not always going to think that you're a great person. And sometimes that's part of it. It's like, I'm angry at you because you told me something that I was hiding from myself, and now I have to confront that. And yeah, that can be hard for clients to deal with, but it doesn't mean that you've done bad. It actually is that you've done something to help facilitate that change and reflection.
And to hold that as a therapist, for someone to
Yeah.
be mad at you, like as somebody whose like whole career is to help people and to want people to thrive and feel better, that can be really hard. And I think that's in my thesis, I was looking at empathy in particular. Autistic women in particular experience more empathic distress. So more distress when they felt emotions than others.
I totally relate to that.
Yeah,
Because I've had to think about it. I've had to think about it deliberately. And the way that I cope now with that is I recognize that I can be empathetic, but I have to not have a mental image in my head. If I start imagining things, then I get distressed. And so I had to train myself to have that emotional distance. Yeah, so I've had to think about it because it was too much.
And with that like a kind of thinking as well, then you start being like, if I'm too distant, am I going to become a bad therapist because I can't empathize?
Exactly.
Like what?
You can't win.
that's that nuance, the nth degree of the specificity that a neurodivergent therapist navigates every single day that they work.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Really interesting. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about is, so whether or not to disclose your neurodivergence to clients. Do you do this? If so, how have you approached this?
So this is an interesting one because the way the profession is developing at the moment, right? At the moment, I feel like the status quo is to divulge it. Like people want to know if you are, and it's actually like sometimes like a marketing strategy. Like if people want you to be, they want that lived experience, so that because they want it, it's a surefire way that the person understands that. And then, so it's really interesting to think about this because you don't know, again, like, because there's the person, like, how enmeshed can you get with a client if you have this same lived experience, but also, like, I'm getting muddled up. I'm thinking, I'm like, there's so many elements.
No, there is. I mean, it could be a podcast episode in itself, and maybe we'll do a bigger one on this because I do think it's actually a really big topic. I'll give you the scary perspective that I heard from a lawyer who told me directly that they reckon it's bad to put on your website that you've got lived experience. They anticipate that there will be complaints in the future related to that, APRA complaints. And I was like, yeah, that's scary. Thank you.
Oh my God. Yeah, but how scary?
But that's one lawyer's perspective. So there's that. But then there's the other perspective, which is like this whole lived experience movement and people wanting autonomy and choice over their providers and wanting them to wanting to know that when they go see a provider, they're going to receive an inclusive, affirming experience. And sometimes you can't be guaranteed that. And it hurts every time that you have a negative provider experience.
Yeah. And the amount of, especially late diagnosis that are not believed or not understood or minimized. Like if you've been diagnosed younger, then like people, they like infantilize you, or if, like, especially if they're neurotypical, but like there's kind of like a less risk of that, I suppose, if their therapist is neurodivergent. The flip of this is when you think about other people of other cultures and minorities, sometimes they want a therapist that has a similar lived experience to them as well. And is this the same? Can we use this is it like the same or is it different? Like, because then like if people are thinking of like neurodivergence as being like a disability or something that somehow like makes you less than, then they would use that as a reason for you to say, well, maybe you shouldn't be like a therapist because of XYZ, right? Like in my personal experience, like I've obviously like out as a neurodivergent person, like because I'm announcing it on a podcast, we're talking about it, but it's not something that I use in my like marketing material or on my website neither. Because it feels a little bit icky to me to be like, you should see me because I'm autistic.
I don't use it in marketing, and I don't, very, very rarely do I disclose in sessions. It's like I could count on one hand, even less, like maybe once or twice I've ever done it in the years that I've been a psych, that I've disclosed that I'm neurodivergent, and it's been for a specific like purposeful reason. But I don't, because I guess I don't really see a need for my particular clients. Like I know that like we get along, but they haven't asked me, and then they haven't needed to confirm that because we are just working well together. And maybe they can assume it's like I'm really knowledgeable about neurodivergence, and so I'll tell them stuff about it, and so maybe they know, or maybe they just think I'm well educated on it, whatever. But yeah, it's not something that I personally bring into my therapy or marketing.
So we're a little bit different in that, is that like I sometimes will tell people straight up, like I don't advertise it for people who are looking for a therapist. But if I'm on the phone and I'm talking to a potential client and seeing if we're a good fit, if it feels appropriate, I will tell them that I heard.
Yeah.
But I won't, like, that's not like marketing material for me.
Yeah.
On the other hand, like if I don't say it, and for a long time I didn't tell anyone, they usually clock it. And eventually,
exactly.
Like, they usually go, "Are you autistic?" Like, because they're direct. And I'm like, yeah, like, or maybe, or, yeah. And so, like, it's funny because I got diagnosed after becoming a fully registered psychologist. I was working with a client between the time I was undiagnosed and diagnosed. And I told her at the end of a session one day, she's like, "I knew it." And I was like, obviously, kind of like, to the surprise of no one, Jordan.
Rolls eyes. Yeah.
Like, I kind of feel like the other element of this is like, do you have to be neurodivergent to work with neurodivergent people?
See, that's a good question too. I don't think so, is my split second thinking about it. What do you think?
Yeah, I also don't think so. I don't think you want to. Like, I think that a neurodivergent psych might have the benefit of lived experience, but that doesn't make them an appropriate therapist for you either. Like, if they don't, they have their lived experience, but if they're not particularly knowledgeable about like the science and the data behind it and all that, then it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be a better therapist than somebody who is maybe neurotypical but has done a lot of work in that space. And obviously we want someone who is neuroaffirming.
Exactly. So don't try and like tell me I'm bad or wrong is pretty much what I'm looking for. Like, because sometimes I feel that way. So as a provider, I wouldn't want you to try and like say that you can cure me and stuff, but I do want help. Usually the things that I want help with are like understanding myself, being less critical of myself, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's something that is not, I mean, it's more prevalent in neurodivergent folk, but it's not unique to them. There's lots of people who are neurotypical who have low self-worth and feel othered and have imposter syndrome and struggle with work or feel burned out and stuff like that. So
yeah, like literally if a neurotypical therapist, if I ask them a question, they answer the question first, then we can get along. If they do this thing where I ask them the question, then they're like, why have you asked that question? Oh, we're not going to get along.
no.
You can ask me why I've asked that question after you answer the question.
Wow, so annoying. Like what?
Yeah.
No, I get it. Like they want you to reflect on. There's a method behind
I get
that.
it. And you can ask me that, but answer the question first, and then you can ask me why I've asked that question. I'm very happy to give that to you.
No, yeah. I don't think it's a ruling in or a ruling out factor for neuro, because like there are neurotypical folk who are going to be better at pointing out things that neurodivergent therapists might be blind to.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
I think it's
yeah.
Yeah, I think it comes back to like client choice and control, and it's like Absolutely. They can select who they think would work best for them. And I don't think you need to be neurodivergent to help a neurodivergent client. Just don't be a dickbag, but I guess the professional thing to say is, but be neurodivergent affirming.
Yeah, I was going to say, just don't be an asshole. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, like that's true for anyone. Like, and that's part of our competencies, and it's actually like changing, right? Like, so you have to be neuroaffirming by the end of, December. Like, that's like a non-negotiable. You shouldn't be like just like medical modeling autistic and ADHDers by the end of the year.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, I think we'll start wrapping up. Maybe we can offer a hopeful message, like an uplifting one. What do you hope listeners will take away from our conversation today? Like if there is a neurodivergent listener who is like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. What are we going to say to them? Yeah.
You're not alone. It's hard for lots of neurodivergent folk. Because it's not just you, seek support with peers. Other people are feeling it too. Like this profession is fucking hard. Like it's just hard.
It's really hard.
It's hard if you're neurotypical. It's hard if you're neurodivergent, and hard for different reasons. Like Bron and I are here for you. We get it. Like and so it's not, you're not defective if you're finding it hard. This is kind of par for the course. Like this is what you would expect. This is a hard gig. Doesn't matter who you are.
Beautiful. I love that. And I guess I would hope that listeners would take away that being a neurodivergent therapist, you have a lot of strengths. There are so many strengths. Like Jordan and I could have gone on about the strengths, but I love that we think about things differently. We have particular skills that really bring out the best in the work that we do. And we have so many strengths. There are some challenges that we face as well. But like, I don't know about you, Jordan, but it might have been a steeper learning curve, but I have overcome like a lot of those challenges, like the hyper empathy, like the feeling like I'm too friendly, and then how to manage that. It's like I've thought about a lot of these things, and it does get better or manageable.
Yeah, I think that being introspective about that and reflecting on your experience and learning and growing is part of being a therapist. Like you can't be a perfect therapist right from the get. So like we're going to make these
absolutely not.
We're going to make these mistakes where we might be a little bit too friendly, or like need to reset a boundary, or I don't know, like spaced out in the session for a second and go, oh God, what was he saying again? Oh, can you repeat that?
Oh my God, literally done that.
Like I think I don't know. Like I think autistic and ADHDers do that, but I would not be surprised if a neurotypical person, especially like executive functioning, fluctuates for everyone.
Well, here's the difference. So when it happened to me, when I zoned out for a sec and then I came back, I was transparent and I told the client, I'm sorry, I've zoned out for a sec, and please repeat what you say. It's important to me.
I think that there's an element of authenticity in that. I'm recognizing you as a human. Like I'm not like someone who's like laser focused on them. Like I think there's like imagine the intensity of someone who's like, I'm listening to your every word.
I literally got that feedback from a client early on as well. It's like, stop nodding so much. I know you're paying attention. and I was like, yep, that's so true. I am nodding too much. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Well, I wonder if that
clients are our best teachers, truly.
The amount of times.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening, listeners. I think we could talk about this forever. There's so much to it, but I really hope you got something out of this episode. Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and it's just been so insightful, and thank you so much. Listeners, if you found this episode helpful, please support mental work by following the podcast. Leave a rating or review. I would love a new review. I haven't had a review in a while. If you want to leave a written review, that would be fab. Or share the podcast with a friend or a colleague. It really does help get these important conversations out there. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening to Mental Work. I'm Bron and Milkins. Have a good one and catch you next time. Bye.